Hey everyone, it's Craig. Today we're going to talk about all the potential ways that you could lose money and why the stock market might be a good hedge against that. Let's get into it.
Hey guys, while I was editing, I saw how scratched up my arms were. I had no idea they looked that bad. They didn't look that bad in person, but I had to show you why. I had to cut down a good bit of bushes, a lot of them. Some of them were quite sharp and poking me. I should have probably had some gloves on or something, but.
So, you get your check, you're bringing home that bacon, and you want to know what to do with it. You could put it in a bank account, you could hide it, I don't know, bury it in your backyard under a mattress in a safe, maybe, preferably. If you're going to do that, if you're going to be really cash heavy, do that. Don't put it under your mattress. Or you can spend it. We're going to talk about the different ways you can spend it, as well as the pros and cons of using a bank account. Those type of accounts greatly vary on the Federal Reserve interest rate, which is currently sitting at about goose eggs 0, so a lot of banks can't offer too much more than that. I've seen some banks that have, upwards of 2.5% or 3% return, but a lot of them come with these weird stipulations where you have to have a certain number of deposits every month, certain number of expenditures, and I'm not just talking about the regulatory cash account savings, cash management regulations of like less than 6 withdrawals a month. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about odd amounts of money you have to have expended out of the account for some reason. It's weird. But anyways, I digress. What I chose to go with was Ally Bank, and they give about a 1.5%. I think 1.5 is the current APY or annual percentage yield for your money that you keep in your savings account. The reason I'm not chasing higher returns is because I actually really like the customer service that I've got from Ally. It's been better than any brick and mortar bank that I've been to or that I've done business with. And you still get a decent return. I am, by the way, not affiliated whatsoever with this bank. I mean, I probably have like -2 subscribers right now, so don't worry about that. All right, new hairstyle. So how could you lose money in a bank account? The bank could go belly up and the company could file for bankruptcy. But here's the way to protect yourself from that. Just make sure you choose a bank that is FDIC insured, meaning the government will back all of the assets in that account up to $250,000. That's a wonderful privilege here in America. A lot of countries don't have anything like that. So if you do have more than $250,000, you should get multiple bank accounts, break it up, so you're still under the same umbrella of insurance protection. But if you have that much, you're probably not watching videos about stocks. It's a little condescending to my viewers, I'm sorry. Another way to lose money is to lose the value of your money over time. And that could be due to something called inflation. Now, the Federal Reserve has made it their mission to achieve 2% inflation per annum, or on average, every single year. So there you have it. The Fed wants 2% inflation, but typical bank accounts don't keep up with that level of inflation. So over time you lose money if it's just sitting around. There can be tons of positives by knowing for certain that you have that amount of money laying around. It's extraordinarily liquid because it's not tied up in anything. You should be able to retrieve it from your bank account easily. You don't have to worry about selling an asset, your house or stocks or anything. This is a great place to keep an emergency fund where you know if you need that money, it will be there. The second thing I said that you could do with your money was to hide it. But hopefully you can see the exact same weaknesses with that last strategy if you're hiding your money. It's not going up in value to match inflation, and you're actually at a higher risk of losing it through theft or some other means if you don't have like a rock solid insurance plan where you have all of your assets delineated in like an Excel spreadsheet, and you have a super religious log about the amount of cash you have on hand. And even then, I don't know if they would take that necessarily when it comes to claims time. So be forewarned. Use a bank if you can for large sums of money. That's my recommendation. So now let's actually talk about what you can buy with your money. There are the necessities and essentials, housing, food, gym, tan, laundry. So any luxury items or anything with a useful lifespan will lose value over time. Boomers! There are a few exceptions like collector's items and other things of that nature where there's a side market, a demand for it that the affluent and ultra-rich dabble in. But other than that, most things that are above and beyond your basic bare minimum essentials are going to come down in value. So other than that, you could buy gifts for somebody because you don't really care that it's going down in value. It's just something that you want to give and be charitable or make donations to causes that really rock and that you really are gung-ho about. And those are great things too. They shouldn't be discounted. They're probably some of the best ways you'll actually accrue joy in your life. Money's not going to make you ultra rich. That makes no sense, Craig. So money could make you ultra rich, but it's not going to really make you happier per se. So one of the better things I think you could do with your money in the buying category is to invest in yourself or invest in a business that you want to build and that you believe in. Gains and return and all of that be damned, right? This is a chance for you to stand up and say, here I am, world. Look at what I've accomplished. Look at what I've earned. Look at what I can know. Look at what I can help, what problems I can solve. And you're like I said in the last point, that's going to make you happier than a whole buttload of money or like a few percentage points better than beating the stock market. Okay, so rant over. So now we can buy assets or financial instruments that can keep up with or beat inflation, like real estate property, CDs, loans where you're acting as the bank and you have borrowers that pay you back on a set agreed to schedule, and stocks. Common stock is what you could find publicly traded on the open market, and it's what you and me could get as a strike price or whatever for a certain company's stock ticker symbol. It's what you type it into Google, you type in VOO and you'll see the Vanguard Index's S&P 500 stock market ticker and see that's the price you could obtain it at right now if you chose to buy. There's something else called preferred stock where you have a bit of an advantage. The reason you have an advantage is you can obtain shares cheaper than the average public or with a better dividend return or a return in some other manner that is higher than what the public could get. And the reason you would be offered that is because you could provide such a large cash infusion or a demonstrable increase in the company's productivity through your association and or resources and what you can lever in your own other ventures to help the company grow, like synergy, right? So who comes to mind when you think of somebody with that type of capability. It's Warren Buffett, maybe. There's a lot of other successful investors who do the same thing. But Warren is probably one of the most widely recognized, most successful, and Warren can open doors that you and I can't. So he obviously has more value to offer a company by partnering with them, owning parts of their business, or owning the majority share of their business. So how can you lose money in stocks? Well, you could buy a company at its current market price. It could change the way it was operating or see a decline in revenue, and the subsequent stock price could come down, and you choose to sell at a lower strike price than when you bought it. And that is a huge point. I want to restate that. You choose to sell. So that means if you don't sell, you actually haven't lost anything in a market downturn. This is really important for buy and hold, which we'll talk about in another video, but it's one of my favorite strategies, and it's something I really think and hope that you would benefit from. So, onward. The company can also perform so poorly that it can no longer feasibly meet its obligations. It's just not bringing in enough revenue to cover the costs of its outstanding debt. And the creditors and debtors are calling, loan sharks essentially are knocking at their door, and they cannot come up with the money to satisfy their debt. So they have to go into something called bankruptcy that you and me have to go through. But they have different chapters in for business. We're used to chapters 13 and 11, I think. They have different chapter bankruptcies that they go through. So what can you do to prevent this type of thing from happening, and why even consider stock in the first place? So you can safeguard yourself or insulate yourself by not having all of your eggs in one basket. And that is something called diversification, which is probably one of my favorite topics, and I cannot wait to go into that. But fortunately, it's another video. Like, how long is this video already? Jesus. It's entirely based on the country's gross domestic product relative to the gross domestic product of the rest of the world. So a booming economy means a strong dollar. That's important. The government can secure loans from other countries with that strong dollar based off of the backs of you and me and our hard work and our productivity and the ability of companies to synergize and bring together that productivity in a meaningful way to make value. That is why the US can go into such tremendous amounts of debt, 20 trillion. How many extra trillion for this stimulus package? Is because we actually have a means of paying that back. If we didn't, then a whole lot of countries would be bailing on us. Are they? So you're really left with these choices, and there's tons of other topics and other YouTubers that would love to go down the rabbit hole in a different light, but let me just ask. So, do you believe the government will collapse? If you do, we're probably all pretty screwed anyways. So that's one line of thought. Second, if it doesn't collapse, but they're on the brink, right? Do you think the government would do anything in its power to remain in power, including bolstering and incentivizing businesses with tax cuts, etc., whatever it needs to be, cash infusions to stay afloat, kind of like we're seeing now? Yes, they will. And we're seeing it to a large extent now, but honestly, it could go way further. If not, the government would do whatever it takes to incentivize businesses, to employ people, to create value, to be competitive in the global marketplace and thus have a stronger footing in negotiations in foreign affairs. Kind of like what we're seeing now. Yeah? All right, the other choice you have to make. Do you believe the economy will crash? And I mean crash, not like, oh, it dove down. I mean crashed and never recovered. Do you think that would happen? Do you believe that there would be no entrepreneurs to fill the void of failed bankrupt companies and that we would never see a return to normalcy in the ways of life and the likes that we've seen thus far? That's a choice you have to make. But either way, any of those scenarios, right? If either of those happen, our money would become essentially worthless. It would crash radically. And you wouldn't be in any better place or position than you currently are holding on to cash if you were in the stock market as if you had a bank account. It just wouldn't help. So the real reason to bet on the stock market is because you're betting on the bright minds and hardworking people of this country to weather any storm, get through any obstacle, and come out ahead. Sure, maybe some companies would go under and whatnot, but there will be 10 companies to replace each company that goes under. Like you're cutting the head off of a hydra, right? Like in Hercules, you cut one head off and 3 more sprite up. You could definitely buy some of those commodity metals and goods and services. No. You can definitely buy some of those commodity metals as a small hedge against what's going to happen. Or you could go all in. That could be all you buy. You could just be the gold man. You're the gold man. You have silver and molybdenum and platinum and iridium and whatever. I don't know. But you could go all in on that. But their returns historically have been crap compared to the market. So it's a risk you have to choose to take because while I think a little bit of it would be a good hedge to exchange for other currencies that aren't suffering as much, but if the United States crashes, I think the whole world's going to be in a heap of trouble. So it could just be the patrioticness of me, but maybe I'm blinded. But I think we are pretty much essential in world players. Like until another country tries to usurp us from our position of power. But that's not fun or interesting or anything to you, viewer. I'm sorry I said that. If you don't believe that owning companies is a hedge against inflation or hyperinflation, it wasn't that long ago when Venezuela reached the peak of their hyperinflation, where a cup of coffee cost $1 million in their local currency. I'd rather have a share in a company that is selling $1 million coffees and have a valuation subsequently based off of those $1 million coffee sales than to have my money in a bank account where I'm losing 99.999% of its value and I can't buy that same cup of coffee.